So Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was an extremist for love. He was a militant for tenderness and a radical for sweetness. He was willing to talk publicly, explicitly, and unapologetically about love, and love defined as the steadfast commitment to the well-being of others. We are taking great inspiration from Dr. King this year, but instead of hearing it from me, let's hear it from him.
History is that the concepts of love and power have usually been contrasted as opposites, polar opposites. So that love is identified with a resignation of power, and power with a denial of love. Now we got to get this thing right. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best. Power at its best is love, implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love.
I just want to go back to one of the things he said. Power without love is reckless and abusive. In our work at the Southern Center for Human Rights, we see manifestations of reckless and abusive power throughout our criminal legal system every single day. We see it in our country's addiction to incarceration and the over-detention of immigrants and people of color, as well as those who are struggling with mental illness and addiction. We see it in the ways that private prison and private probation companies are getting rich off the backs of some of our most vulnerable members of our community. We see it in the many ways that people who encounter the police are devalued, humiliated, and even killed. One particularly egregious manifestation of this kind of abuse of power is in our nation's use of solitary confinement. In Georgia, harsh and horrible conditions of solitary confinement prompted us to litigate on behalf of the men who are trapped in dark cells in the Special Management Unit at Georgia Diagnostic and Classifications Prison in Jackson. Because this is a part of our society that is so frequently cloaked in darkness, I want to show you a couple photos from the Special Management Unit to give you an idea of what people who are caged in this way endure, not for days, not for weeks, not for months, but for years, and in some cases of our clients, in excess of 10 years. This is, I can tell it's a little hard to see, but bear with me. This is a clean cell. It is about the size of a parking space. People had previously been stuck in this space 24/7 with the exception of 4 hours a week. When they turn on the shower floods the space and it never dries out. It's always rank. This is a window that is intentionally covered to block light from getting in from the outside. We encountered cells in which the bulb was burned out for 4 months, rendering the person inside there literally in total darkness for months on end. And when people do get to go outside, they would spend time in an outdoor cage. We took great exception to this, and so along with our colleagues at Kilpatrick Townsend, we litigated on behalf of the men in this unit. And I'm so pleased to say that as a result of the great work of our team and Kilpatrick's team, we got a final settlement just yesterday in this case that really transforms the conditions. But at the Southern Center for Human Rights, we don't take anything for granted, and we know that we must keep pressing forward because there are people who need us so urgently. And so just last month, we continued our work against solitary confinement by filing a brand new lawsuit on behalf of women with mental illness who are incarcerated at the South Fulton Municipal Jail, which is just outside of Atlanta. When you enter this jail, the smell is overwhelming and it is difficult to breathe. Throughout the jail's pods, women can be found lying on the floor, filthy. Many of the women are entirely unresponsive, and some who can communicate mutter incoherently. Some of them hold up signs begging for help. Some of our clients have been held in solitary confinement in these conditions at the jail for over 5 months, despite the fact that the reason they're there are for very low-level offenses, including ordinance violations and misdemeanors. This practice of locking people away for months and years on end is not only totally cruel and horrific, but absolutely counterproductive to the goals of public safety and successful rehabilitation. It's also void of love, and it is void of justice. Thanks to your support, we are able to confront this reckless power and bring love and justice in a place where it is not. We also see reckless and abusive power in the way that our system criminalizes people for no other reason than that they are poor. Our cash bail system is designed to literally allow people who have financial means to purchase their way out of jail, while those who don't have the means must languish. Thanks to your support, last year we passed bail reform in the city of Atlanta, along with our coalition partners. This was under the leadership of Mayor Bottoms and with the unanimous support of City Council. And since then, we have been working to implement and enforce this law. Some early numbers show that this law is very successful, and in the first few months of it being in effect, over 3,000 people who would have otherwise had to sit in jail were released on their own recognizance without having to pay bonds. This, and what that means is that over $3 million that would have otherwise had to go to line the pockets of bail bondsmen stay in the pockets of the people who need it the most. Thanks to your support, we are taking this campaign to reform bail across the state of Georgia, and we look forward to continuing to dismantle this two-tiered system of justice. We see countless examples during which the power of law enforcement becomes abusive. This is particularly problematic when it involves our youth. In March, we filed a lawsuit on behalf of 65 young people who were arrested while attending a party in Cartersville. The majority of the guests were in their late teens and early 20s, and they were totally stunned when police entered the house without a warrant. The police claimed to have smelled marijuana, even though their patrol car windows were closed as they went by. When one small bag of marijuana was found and the police were unable to tie it to any of the party goers, they went ahead and arrested all 65 people. Some of these young people were in jail for up to 3 days. Some were held in isolation, they were strip searched, they were threatened with tasers, they were otherwise humiliated. One of our clients talked about his experiences being treated inhumanely and like an animal. 12 days after the arrest, the Bartow County District Attorney dropped all the charges. But the arrests had already been highly publicized, and mugshots were available online, and there were very serious consequences for these young people. Prior to this mass arrest, our client, Nija Guider, a 22-year-old single mother of a 1-year-old, had just gotten a new job at a Mexican restaurant. She had just found stable housing, she had bought her son his Christmas presents on her own for the first time, and she was starting to feel hopeful about life. She went to this party after finishing her shift and was there 1 hour before she was arrested, and then she was detained for 3 days and in that time lost this new job. Her employer told her she was fired because her mugshot was on the news. It took her 2.5 months to find a new job, and in that time, she had to go to a food bank to be able to feed herself and her son. This is reckless and abusive power. And there may be no greater perversion of power in our legal system than the racism that infects every single part of our criminal legal system, from arrest to detention to sentencing and everything in between. With your support, we are continuing our fight against race discrimination in death penalty cases. As many of you know, the Southern Center has been spotlighting race discrimination in death penalty cases, specifically with regard to jury selection, for decades, including our win in 2016 in the Supreme Court in the case of Foster v. Chapman. These are the prosecutor's notes, and if you can see there, the prosecutor went to great lengths to show which of the potential jurors were black to ensure that Tim Foster was tried and convicted and sentenced to death by an all-white jury. But our work on this does not end with Tim Foster. we have continued to take on new cases that spotlight race discrimination in jury selection around Georgia. And thanks to your support, we will continue to call out that racism as we see it. And we also fight race discrimination and mass incarceration by challenging extreme sentencing practices that are carried out almost exclusively against people of color. In just a few moments, you'll get to hear a personal story about what this work looks like and its impact from our former client, Christopher Williams, who we're delighted to have here with us tonight. But before we go there, I just want to take a quick moment to look back at the other part of Dr. King's quote. Power at its best is love, implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. This begs the question, what is love? Love is respecting the humanity and the dignity of all people. Love is the desire for all people to be able to enjoy the full possibilities that life has to offer. Love is believing that every person's life is worth more than their worst moments. And at the Southern Center for Human Rights, we believe that love in action is using our power to push back against abusive, corrupt, reckless practices. So where this leaves us is implementing Dr. King's charge leads us to a very simple equation that is guiding our work this year. Justice equals power plus love. Your gifts, your friendship, your encouragement builds our power. It fortifies our love, and it supports our work to grow justice. Your generosity makes all of this work possible, and what I've told you about today represents the tip of the iceberg of the extraordinary work that my colleagues do every day. Thank you for your partnership. We look forward to making you proud in the months and years to come. Together, may we realize our own full potential and implement the true demands of justice. Thank you.